My name is Ella James, and I live in North Carolina, America. I remember the 19th of December 2024 so vividly. It was a night I will never forget. That evening I felt unusually cold and feverish. It wasn't the kind of cold that comes from chilly weather. It was something deeper, something I couldn't quite explain. Concerned, I called my doctor. He came over, checked my vitals, and gave me some medication to help with the fever. He reassured me that I'd feel better after some rest. I went to bed feeling weak and a little uneasy, but I told myself everything would be fine. My eyes grew heavy, and I drifted off to sleep. At least that's what I thought. I woke up suddenly, and the first thing I noticed was the clock on my bedside table. It read 12:10 a.m. My body felt strange, like I was light as air yet heavy with exhaustion. A wave of dizziness swept over me. I tried to sit up, but I couldn't. It was then I realized something was different. I wasn't in my room anymore. I was shocked when I saw myself floating over my body. I am not sure if I was dead or out of body experience, but that was the reality of what I saw before me. Was a brightness unlike anything I'd ever seen. It wasn't harsh or blinding. It was warm and inviting. The light wasn't just white. It was alive with colors that seemed to sing in harmony, each blending into the next with a melody that spoke directly to my soul. I felt peace like I had never known before, as if every worry, every fear, and every burden I had ever carried was lifted in an instant. As I looked around, I realized I was standing, not lying down, not sitting, but standing, and my body no longer felt weak. In fact, it felt perfect, whole, as if I had been renewed from the inside out. I was in awe. That's when I saw them. Angels. They were everywhere, their forms glowing with an unearthly radiance. They weren't the delicate figures I had seen in paintings or sculptures. They were majestic, powerful, and yet incredibly gentle. Their presence filled the space with a sense of reverence and love. In the center of it all there was a throne. It was unlike anything I could have imagined. It was massive and magnificent, and it seemed to shine with a light of its own. Surrounding it was an indescribable glory, something so holy that I instinctively knew this was no ordinary place. Seated on the throne was a figure. I knew immediately who it was. It was Jesus. The light surrounding him was so radiant, so pure, that I couldn't look directly at him for long. Yet even without fully seeing his face, I felt his presence. It was as if every part of me, my mind, my heart, my spirit, knew him as if I had always known him. He didn't speak, at least not in words, but his presence spoke volumes. It was like he was telling me that I was safe, that I was loved, and that everything was as it should be. Tears welled up in my eyes, not out of sadness but out of sheer wonder. Then, before I could take in any more, I felt a force, not harsh but firm, carry me away from the throne. It wasn't frightening. It felt like being gently guided, like a child being led by a loving parent. The scene began to change, and I found myself somewhere else entirely. I was shown an evil plan, one so sinister and devastating that it aims to destroy major cities across the world. The scale of the destruction was unimaginable. Millions of lives were at stake, and entire cities were left in ruins. I want to expand on what I was shown because it's important to grasp the magnitude of what's coming and the forces at work behind it. The first place I was shown was Florida. It began with the ground trembling violently. At first, it seemed like a typical earthquake, a terrifying event, but nothing beyond what we've heard of before. However, within moments, it became clear this was far from normal. The shaking intensified to unimaginable levels, and the earth itself began to split apart. I watched in horror as the cracks grew wider and deeper, swallowing entire neighborhoods. Homes collapsed into the gaping voids, leaving behind piles of rubble and dust. Streets buckled and crumbled as if some unseen force was tearing them apart. The chaos was overwhelming. People were running in every direction, screaming for their lives, but there was no safe place to go. The survivors, those who weren't crushed or trapped, were left standing amidst total devastation. I saw their faces etched with fear, confusion, and hopelessness. Families clung to one another, trying to find comfort in the middle of the destruction. But there was none. The skies above were dark, filled with heavy clouds, and the air was thick with choking dust. It felt like all hope had been stripped away. As I watched, my heart ached for these people. I could feel their terror and despair as if it were my own. But even in the midst of such destruction, I heard a voice within my spirit, a calm, steady reassurance. Do not panic. God reveals things like this so His people can prepare. Trust in Him. Then the vision shifted and I saw something. I was shown the forces behind these disasters. It wasn't just nature unleashing its fury. This destruction was planned, orchestrated by men in secret. I saw shadowy figures in hidden chambers, working with advanced technology far beyond anything I'd ever imagined. They were manipulating the weather through cloud seeding, creating storms laced with lightning, and unleashing destruction under the guise of natural disasters. But what shocked me the most were the weapons. These weren't traditional bombs or missiles. They were nano-weapons. Microscopic devices engineered to replicate themselves and cause catastrophic damage. The level of precision and devastation these weapons could achieve was horrifying. They could tear apart cities without warning, leaving behind death and destruction, while making it appear as though the disasters were natural events, like climate change. But this was no accident. It was a deliberate, evil plan. As I watched these men in their secret chambers, I felt the weight of their intentions. They wanted to create fear, chaos, and destruction on a scale the world had never seen. But I also understood that this vision was a warning, not just of their plans but of the spiritual forces driving them. God was showing me that while these disasters may appear unstoppable, there is great power in prayer. America must pray. What I witnessed was devastating, but I came to understand that it was not meant to fill me with fear. Instead, it was a reminder that God is in control, and through Him we can find strength and protection. Next, I was taken to New York City, and what I saw there was even more horrifying than what I had witnessed in Florida. It began much the same way. The ground trembled violently. At first, it seemed like a powerful earthquake, but it quickly became evident that this was no ordinary event. The shaking grew so intense that buildings, tall, towering skyscrapers, began to sway dangerously. Within moments, they started to collapse, falling like they were made of paper. One by one, the iconic structures that once defined the city's skyline crumbled into heaps of debris. The streets were filled with chaos. People were running in every direction, desperately trying to escape, but there was no safe place to go. The ground beneath them was cracking and buckling, and debris rained down from above. The noise was deafening: screams, the crashing of steel and concrete, and the relentless rumble of the earth tearing itself apart. And then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, the water came. A massive tsunami, triggered by the earthquake, surged through the city. The wave was colossal, swallowing everything in its path. I watched in disbelief as cars were swept away like toys, entire neighborhoods were submerged, and homes and businesses were reduced to nothing but rubble floating on the water's surface. I stood there, frozen, watching the horror unfold. I felt an overwhelming sense of despair. The destruction was so vast, so complete, that it seemed impossible to recover from. The lives lost, the homes destroyed, the city itself. It was hard to imagine how anything could ever be rebuilt. Even if it were possible, it would take years, perhaps decades, and even then, nothing would ever be the same. As I stood there, feeling drained and hopeless, something remarkable happened. A radiant light appeared, passing over me. It wasn't harsh or blinding. It was warm, calming, and comforting. In that moment, I felt a peace that was almost otherworldly, as if this light carried with it the presence of God. And then I heard a voice, clear and full of authority. It spoke with a tone that resonated deep within me. These are orchestrated plans from the pit of hell. They are meant to terrify believers. The voice continued, revealing the reasons behind these attacks. First, it said, the plans were targeting governments that openly acknowledge God and stand for Jesus Christ. These disasters were acts of rebellion, direct assaults against leaders who upheld faith and righteousness. It further explained that these events were part of a larger agenda. They were warnings, twisted declarations from forces aligned with the Antichrist. The goal was to spread fear and deceive the world into believing that these catastrophes were the result of climate change. It was a way to push their agenda while hiding the true source of destruction. But the voice didn't stop there. It revealed the horrifying truth about the weapons being used. These weren't natural disasters or even traditional acts of war. They were the result of highly advanced, sinister technology. Small, self-replicating nanorobots capable of unimaginable destruction. Tiny machines with devastating explosive force. They could target entire cities, tearing them apart, while leaving almost no trace of who was behind the attack. I realized that the scale of this evil was beyond what most of us could comprehend. These weapons were designed not just to destroy but to create confusion and fear. They were nearly impossible to stop or trace back to their origin. Again the voice echoed. This was a warning, a call to prayer and preparation. It was a reminder that, despite the plans of darkness, God's light still prevails. We are not powerless. Through prayer, faith, and trust in Him, we can stand against these evil schemes. When I came back to myself, my body was still trembling. The weight of what I had seen was overwhelming, but I also felt a sense of purpose. This vision was not given to me to keep to myself but to share with others. It's a call to action, a call to prayer. The urgency was clear. We must pray for our cities and America at large. When we pray, evil can be pushed back. God is still sovereign, and He hears His people. So I urge you, please pray for these two cities, for your families, and for America as a nation. Pray for wisdom among our leaders' protection, and the courage to stand firm in these times. God bless you.